Welcome. I'm creating a series of color correction videos about Premiere Pro. I'm going to talk about the different types of tools that I've used, different types of tricks that I've learned, and this is going to be the first video of many. Today I'm just going to talk about the different types of scopes that you have here. The importance of the scopes is a lot of times our eyes can lie to us about what we're seeing. So these scopes don't lie. They're showing us what's on the program clip here, and the better we can read this, the better we can tell what's going on in whatever atmosphere that we're in, whether we're in a studio at the station or whether we're outside on the side of the street in a news vehicle trying to look at all the different types of clips that we've got. We can use these scopes to give us a true reading about what we're supposed to be seeing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dig in here. First thing, if you don't have the scopes on your screen, you go to the top up here, go across to Windows. Right down here below Lumetri Color, you see Lumetri Scopes. If you click on this and have this X, you'll have it popped up somewhere. I usually keep it on top of my source video here. And of course, as you can see, I have a laptop here, which is not a lot of screen real estate. When I have my workstation computer and I have a lot more, two separate screens, I can place it beside the source video there. But now with just this laptop, I have it set on top of my source video. So, looking here, it probably doesn't look like this when you first open it. What you're probably seeing is something that looks like this. All right, this has got a lot more information. It's basically both of those scopes squeezed into one here. And so I'm going to show you the difference of them. And to me, this is just too much information at once. So I have the waveform selected. I have the parade selected. And here you have the different options of the viewer under those two different types. The waveform, I have the Luma. And the parade, I have the RGB. So as you see, waveform here, the RGB, the waveform, I like to use the Luma on there, and I'll show you why. The Luma shows you the actual exposure of the clip itself. The RGB shows you, it's not really the exposure, but it's showing you how much of each of these three colors are being used in that video to make up the different variations of the colors. So this shows your exposure. So you have, this is showing you an HD exposure where you can have below 0 and up above 100. But most of the cameras and TVs and everything is going to be between 0 and 100. Or actually about, most of your TVs are going to be about 7.5 to around like 80 or 90, somewhere around there. So if something is all the way up at 100, it has no color definition to it whatsoever. It is just white pixels. There's not any information there. It's at the very max of its range. If it's at 0 down here, it's the same thing, but it's completely black. There's no color in it. It is at the lowest that it could read. The camera couldn't even read the colors. So you want to kind of prevent that from happening in that area. And I'll show you different tools later on how you can either pull the picture down or pull it up or squeeze it or stretch it out, however you want the video to look. I'll show you those tools to be able to do that. Now the parade actually shows you 3 different pictures in one, but it's showing you how the colors are used. Here in this, where there's a lot of red tint to it, you see there's a lot of red used. There's not a whole lot of blue used. And it shows the greens kind of in the mid-range there. So with this, you're looking at exposure. With this is actually showing you how much of the different colors are used. This is beneficial when you're trying to white balance. When you're trying, if you have something there that is, is supposed to be white, that means if it's at 70 on red, it means to be 70 on green and 70 on blue, and then it shows white. Wherever everything meets all the way across, that's where it's going to show white. Not at 100%, because if you can see here, this top right here is showing white, where his shirt and the back picture is not, because this top is all the way at 100%. It's kind of deceptive. because it's not truly white because of the white balance of the camera. It's white because it's completely overexposed and there's no color definition in it whatsoever. So I'll show you the correction, how to correct that later. But actually, in reading these scopes from one end to the other, I'm going to play this video for just a second. See how his head kind of moves around? Play that again. See where you have the movement of his head right here? So that kind of shows me that the exposure of his head is really in this 60 to 40 range, which is not bad exposure. But you can see his shirt, the bottle cap, a lot of it, this is not really bad exposure here. But really with this, the color range is off. So I'm going to go over to these color bars just so we can look at it here. This is a standard HD color bar range here. So you can see the difference in these two scopes. This shows the exposure of how your eye is going to actually see it. The human eye perceives white brighter than it does these other color ranges. When you go farther in the color range, the deeper, the darker it seems to the naked eye, not necessarily to the video. So this LumaScope actually shows you what the exposure looks like to the naked eye. This Parade scope here shows you how much of each of these colors are being used to make your variations of these colors. So you see where there's 100%, that means there's not any of those colors used to make whatever's in that area. Here's 100%. I can tell you that right there is that white, because there's 100% equal of the red, green, and blue in order to make this 100% white right here. So one other scope that I'm going to show you that I haven't talked about is the vector scope. I'm going to pop that little wheel up like that. You've probably seen that. I'm going to pull the Parade and the waveform down for a second. All right, this vector scope actually shows you the saturation of the colors that are there. So it doesn't show you how bright, it shows you how much color is present, the saturation of the color. So if I were to take a color correction effect, this is the one I usually use, and we'll talk about more in a future video, but I come down to the saturation of this bar right here, and I pull it all the way down to 0, you saw how every color retreated to that 0% right there, because there's no color in it whatsoever. But if I were to bring back the Parade and the waveform, the LumaScope, there's still brightness. The colors are still there making up these grays and whites colors, but and there's still exposure here, but there's just no saturation, no color present in the vector scope. So that's what these three different scopes show here. The amount of saturation of the color, the amount of the colors used to make what you see on there, and the exposure of what's being seen. So if I bring the saturation back up, you see how it's using more of the colors to bring some color back to it. These are spreading back out to their various color ranges, but the intensity, the brightness, the exposure is not changing. Well, it changes a little bit, just because more saturation, a little more exposure on there. So, all right, so that is what we've got across there. You've got vector scope. It shows the saturation, the amount of color that's present. You have the Parade, the different colors that are used to make the different variations of the colors. And you have the Luma, which shows you the exposure. So these are the different types of scopes here. The next video, I'm going to talk about the Lumetri color that actually dropped in there, and what the different tools affect there and how you can use it with actually using some white balance and stuff like that. So stick around, join me for my next video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down and I'll try to get to them the next time I create a video, and gives us something more to talk about. All right, thank you.